Hi, and welcome to episode 10 of Chasing Squirrels podcast. I'm mind blown at the fact that I'm now 10 episodes in, and that, I've kind of made it through 10 episodes. I'm constantly trying to make these conversation moments happen with some of my fantastic colleagues, and it's always a pretty cool challenge to try and coordinate it. It's been mentioned before that often these podcasts, the sound capture of it, the conversation, they happen sometimes long after the kids have gone to bed, and sometimes they're happening before the kids get up. So I'm really happy that I've been able to make it to episode 10, and really I got no interest in stopping. I'm going to keep having cool conversations with cool colleagues of mine and going for that answer about how my PLN is changing the face of education, just one person at a time. This episode is a bit of a touchstone for me. As I said, it's episode 10, and I get a chance to talk with Rolland Chidiac. Rolland Chidiac is a phenomenal educator, connected educator, an incredible edu-techno sharer. He's got associations with Google. The dude brings all of this learning out to his PLN, shares it with his students, and he does it with style. I've always felt that Rolland is in my corner whenever I have a question, and I'm sure if you were to reach out to him, he'd be more than happy to share with you. I'll also say that this podcast is in part due to Rolland's support, and he's been my go-to guy whenever I've had a question. I know for a fact that you're going to dig this conversation. Enjoy. All right, welcome to Chasing Squirrels. Tonight, I have the singular pleasure of talking with Rolland Chidiac. Rolland, how are you this evening?
I'm good, Chris. How are you doing?
I am doing well. I'm doing very well. Before we get too deep into it, could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what your current teaching portfolio is?
Sure. So, as you stated, my name is Rolland Chidiac, and I'm currently teaching a grade 4-5 combined class with the Waterloo Catholic District School Board, and I live in Waterloo. I too am a podcaster, and I'm loving every minute of that. So aside from the work that I do as a classroom teacher, the podcasting is my personal project, and I'm really getting into that. As a classroom teacher, though, I really enjoy the integration of technology in the room. I really like to get my kids thinking differently about what they're learning, what they want to learn, the kind of work that they want to pump out in terms of, creation, and just always kind of looking for what's gonna engage them, what's gonna get them going, and more importantly, what's going to get me going. Because if I go into the classroom feeling good, feeling pumped, that rubs off on them. And then when you're both feeling that way and you work together, really magical things happen in the classroom. So that's kind of who I am as a teacher. I'm a father and a husband. I've got two boys who are very busy. We're just finishing up hockey season, and I help out on both of their teams. So I've got that on my plate too. But I guess that's, in a nutshell, that's who I am.
I'm gonna throw something else into there that you and I have talked about in small pieces, but I don't think I've ever given props to you. So I'm gonna do it in a great big way right now. You are one of a group of people that I would say fundamentally changed the way that I connected this particular school year. When I don't even remember how you and I first became connected. I remember when I met you for the first time, but I don't know how it started prior to that. And I know we've had some chats and online chats and obvious chats on podcasts about having the Twitter relationship, the likes and the comments and the sort of the light version. But I felt that when I got to meet you in person, I felt a a bit of a tectonic shift in my perception of what it meant to be connected. When I got to meet you in person, I think that something clicked in me, and it started a way of looking at being digitally connected as equally as equally important as real-time connections. And I'm not quite sure if I really felt that before. I had the idea of having a PLN. I understood the importance of having a PLN, and I was really digging using Twitter as the sort of accelerator for that. But I got to tell you, before I actually got to meet you at that educators exchange, I don't know if I had a clear sense of what it meant to get to know someone digitally and respect their work, and then meet them in person and really get the full force of that duality, that they are as cool online as they are in person. That's compliment number one, because that's who you represent to me. Compliment number two is how openly then, after we met, you shared resources and you shared your mentorship. Because I will say, hands down, you are formative in what I'm doing right now. So my confidence, my interest, my creativity, my sort of like playing around with podcasting, it was something that was on the shelf in my brain 3 or 4 years. You brought it right into the garden and said, go for it, buddy. And directly in a couple, you actually, I think actually said those words, to be honest. I think actually that is, I can't quote you verbatim, I don't have the tape, but I have no doubt as I've gotten to know you more that you said something to that effect, go for it, do what's right for you.
Wow. Well, let me say, and I really appreciate you sharing that, and I'll tell you why. Well, it's a two-way street, Chris. So when we connected digitally, I remember getting some tweets from you. I think it was about the beginning of my podcast. So I guess you had listened in and you had some comments, which was pretty cool, because it's always exciting to hear from people who are listening to the podcast and to get feedback. Also, when I met you in real life, I felt like we already had a foundation of who we were, where we were coming from. And we just clicked, because I guess we had things in common, and, we got along, and that's awesome. And usually that's the way it goes from my experience. But you came with an openness, you came with questions, you came with an authenticity. So it wasn't hard to connect with you. It's not been hard to share my ideas and thoughts. It's not been hard to kind of walk beside you down this road of podcasting and like creation and stuff. You've made it very easy. It's almost too easy, which is really cool, because things don't always come that easy in life. Rarely, I guess, do they come that easy. So it's been my pleasure to be able to be on this journey with you. But definitely a two-way street. Everything you said about me, I can say the same about you, and I have. So it's a cool thing. This notion of being connected digitally, as I heard you talking about it, I couldn't help but reflect on what you were saying and what it means to me. And for me, it's been it's led to huge shift and transformation, because I can connect with whoever I want, whenever I want, digitally. I can't do that face to face. Face to face for me is a bit of a barrier. If for me, my goal is to connect with people face to face, it's just not going to happen, because the means are not there. I have a family, I have a job. There's all kinds of limiting factors, and the people that I may want to meet, it's the same thing. They have lives as well. Whereas using the digital tools we have today, for example, social media and the internet, I can reach out to whoever I want, whenever I want, and then I hope that they reach back. I've got a great example for you. Happened last night, connected with the person this afternoon, and now I'm going to be leveraging a new tool with my students to help them and to benefit their learning and their demonstration of learning. So a couple of days ago, I think on the weekend, there was a conference in California called, it was called Q17, I think.
Yep,
Anyway,
I saw some of the hashtag hits.
awesome. So I was following it because I know some of the educators that were there presenting there, who I've met face to face and who I know digitally. And there was a couple of podcasting presentations and stuff about using audio in the classroom. And so I was all over that, like white on rice. I was just on it because it's an interest of mine and I want to soak up as much as I can. And what an awesome way to learn, to be sitting in my living room or to be, at hockey practice and be able to take out my phone and see what's going on. Like, it's just amazing. So I connect with a person whose name is Rolland as well, but spelt differently. And then from Rolland, and last night I connected with a lady named Audrey Eau Claire, and Audrey I follow her, she follows me back, and then I look at her, I read her profile, and she's involved with stuff that has to do with podcasting and audio in the classroom. So I send her a direct message saying, hey, I just read your profile, I'd love to hear more about the work you do with this app. And next thing you know, she's like, what are you doing tomorrow? And I'm like, at lunch, I'm free. Today we had a hangout where she told me about this really cool app that I will have to tell you about later, because it's not coming. Soundtrap. It's called Soundtrap. Anyway, long story short, I'm now registered to use Soundtrap, and she's going to support me, and she's instant connection. Like instant connection. We hit it off. We got along. It was a great conversation. She tells me, she's like, you know where to find me on Twitter. If you run into any problems, just tweet me. I'm here to help. And for me, yeah, exactly. It's the most powerful thing. It's an amazing feeling to not know the person, but I met her on Twitter yesterday. I saw pictures of her on Facebook, and I was able to make that connection because she was at a summit with people I personally know. So there's that connection. And then we have a Google Hangout where I'm talking and I'm looking at the person that I just met yesterday. That doesn't happen to me in real life. I don't know who it happens to, but to just instantly connect with someone and then be able to have like a hangout for 20 minutes over lunchtime, that just doesn't happen. Because if you think about your day, if you think about your world, you're constantly doing something and you're engaged. Like when I'm at work, I'm with my students, I'm with the staff, I'm not meeting new people. Right? People aren't just walking into the building, walk up to my classroom and say, hey, Rolland Chidiac, I'm so-and-so. I saw your car outside. Like, that's not the way it works. But digitally, that happens all the time.
How it works. Yeah, that is exactly how it works. I often call it the digital hallway. And, you sort of leave having coffee from someone, and it really is. It's like you don't know if you're going to meet them face to face. But I know I'm gonna pass you in that hashtag hallway, and I'll say hi, and I'm gonna check out what you're working on, and that's how it kind of feels. I feel as if and I agree, you don't have the mobility that you feel like you have being digitally connected, and when the program that I'm in is quite closed, so I don't even have a literal hallway that I'm going to pass by staff on transition between periods. So it becomes critical for me to be able to reach out and connect in moments like this, and asynchronously, and through video, in order for me to I think in my heart grow and be able to ask questions and to be able to connect with not always like-minded people, but people that are going to challenge my thinking as well. And the whole idea of not having that at this point is, I don't like that feeling. I was listening to your podcast with Carol Salva, and I actually wrote a piece on this as well, talking about the, kind of feeling a little bit bad for people that aren't connected like this. And I'm not making it trite or even sort of down the nose at it, but I really do agree with that there's value absolutely to connecting with your real-time physical colleagues. That's human contact. That's important. That's where you get a lot of the basic needs met. But when you're pursuing professional connections and you do need variety and you need contrast and you need interdisciplinary connectivity, I don't know if there's a better way to talk about accelerated learning than with what you so clearly articulated. And the last thing I want to give you, and maybe this is the real sweet spot to talking about accelerating our learning through digital means. So you're talking about this app that you're going to trial. You've made a direct connection with someone that's at the mothership, and you're obviously going to get support from there. I will tell you that if you connect with at J Curves, so she's somewhere in the mentors, she's already using that in her music class.
Oh, okay, so right on.
Now you have someone, because of this accelerated model, connected model, that is now within Ontario. I don't know where Soundtrap comes from. My assumption was that it was stateside app. But now you have someone that's actively using it in a way in a classroom that you may want to try too.
Hey, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And
reach out to her. She's a phenomenal music teacher. She's the music head at the school that I was working at prior to where I am now. Great teacher.
Soundtrap is, I believe, from Sweden. I think that's where the headquarters are. And
who gets that? Who gets to say yes? I'm gonna like you. Here's a conversation that would never happen. See this cool textbook I'm using? It's from Sweden.
Exactly. And so is going to do a Google Hangout with me to talk to me about it and how to use it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like,
I just met with the president this afternoon or whatever. Like,
exactly. I've got Audrey's information. I feel like I should give her a shout out because
tag it for sure.
Okay, if she wasn't as open, like she literally was like, "Hey, you want to chat tomorrow?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's her name is Audrey Auclair, so at AudreyOclair. She's an educational consultant specializing in literacy, spec ed, tech, and innovation. And she's the media manager for EdSurge. And she's a Soundtrap ambassador. So, I mean, Audrey comes with, it's all transparent. She operates for them. But for me as a classroom teacher, number one, I don't care where you're coming from. If it's going to help my students, I'm going to talk to you. And number two, very kind person, like very authentic. I'm not telling you about everything we talked about, but we didn't just talk about Soundtrap. We talked about her work, my work, what we have in common. Like, it was a good conversation for two people that I've never met before. There was a flow, right? There was a synergy. And I felt good. Like, I don't feel like somebody was trying to sell me something. I don't feel like, I was sitting there thinking, why am I wasting my time? I had nothing like that. I felt good about the conversation. I would like to think she felt the same way. But if she didn't, that's on her. She could have easily said, we're finished. I'm going to move on. Take care. But anyway, long story short, the digital connections that people don't understand, that people look at you and I and they wonder, like, these people are wasting their time. It's not been a waste of time because my growth has been amazing. In my opinion, my students have benefited from my growth, and my students motivate me and inspire me to continue to reach out to people, to continue to help people out who reach out to me. And I let my students know about that. And so I'm hoping that by talking to them about this, I'm modeling for them what I'd like them to do, how I'd like them to go out into the world, into this 21st century, and live their lives knowing that they can leverage these things to improve their life and to help them improve other people's lives. Because I teach for a Catholic school board, okay? So we're a faith-based system, and a lot goes with that. It's not just about, it's about who we are, not just what we do. And so I'm modeling that for them as well. And I'm just doing my best to live my life in today's time. And who knows, maybe in a year I'll be behind. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm ahead. All I know is I'm open to it, and I'm doing my best to use it for good. And I'm showing my students that, and I'm constantly talking to them about it, because they need to know. Like, for example, today I tweeted out I was in my room at lunch, and the kids were outside, and I was gathering some stuff because I was leaving, because my planning time was going to start. And I looked at one of the middle groups in my room, and there were 4 cell phones just sitting on the desks. I tweeted it out. I took a picture and I tweeted it. Picture, yeah, and you know, my kids know what to do with this technology now. When it's at school, we used to lock it up. Now they're just so comfortable. They just leave it on their desk and they go outside to play. Like, they don't even take it outside to sneak in a text to their friend or anything. They literally just put them down and go about their business. And then when it's time to work, or it's, you know, they'll listen to music while they work, or they'll do like a quick research, whatever. To me, I tell them, I trust you. You know what to do with these things while you're in my care. And it's a respect. I show you respect. I'd appreciate it if you showed me respect with the way that you use this mobile device. And it just hit me. It was like amazing. And I've not been having the best week. I know it's only Tuesday, but I was like, I saw it and I thought, this is awesome. This is why I do what I do. And these kids are growing and they're moving forward in today's day and age. And hopefully they'll be prepared for what comes next because of what they're getting now.
I saw the photo and I thought it was a brilliant photo of how normalized technology should be in the classroom. I almost thought to myself, because it also showed the cluster of other school tools on the table and the phones just happened to be in with the group. Mm-hmm. And I got 2 messages from it. This is on the table just like any other tool for learning. The second was, when you're going out to play, you don't take your phone with you. And I thought that really is like, and whether that was intentional in what you're transmitting, I too believe in that as well. There's a whole lot that that I think someone may be looking at that picture that isn't as let's say as comfortable with using digital tools may look at that and say, oh, they're going to get stolen. Mm-hmm. Or which is still a possibility. Of course it is, in the same way kids steal textbooks, right? But I just mean, it is a possibility someone could see that as a value, but I saw that as, this is a trusting environment. I saw it as, these are kids that are using tools when necessary. I saw it as, they're going out to play. It's a beautiful day. Why would they take their phone with them? Mm-hmm. And I saw it as a strong indicator of your practice, that this is the way that it happens here in my classroom. Because, you know,
if you were a student in my, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. No. If you were a student in my classroom community, you'd look at the picture and you'd say exactly what the rest of them would say, that I walk around all day telling them there's a time and place for everything. And they know that now, and they get that, and they don't need to take their phone out. They don't need to sneak it out so they can text whoever they need to text. We have this, I just feel like we have an agreement, and not every day goes well. Some days they do abuse the technology, but it's not an often occurrence at all. The students, they take care of each other. They know what the expectations are, and they don't want things to go south because one person is making poor choices and they don't step up and help out. Because I expect them at this point in the school year, if you see somebody doing what they shouldn't be doing with it for whatever reason, just like sometimes they use their pencils to doodle when they should be, writing their essay or whatever, they'll tell each other, they'll be like, what are you doing? What do you think you're doing? You shouldn't be doing that right now. It's not the time. It's not the time or the place for it right now. And they get it. And I don't have to do that at this point. And it's fantastic because I need them to be good people. If they see something happening that shouldn't be happening, I need them to step up and, as a kind human being, tell someone else what they see that's happening wrong and what they might be able to do to assist that person in making the right choice. So there are lots of layers here, but one of them is There's a time and place for everything. The other one is that it's commonplace now for these devices to just be laying around during the school day. Now, normally we do lock them up because I do everything I can to ensure the safety of those devices while the students are under my care. And that's the thing. Yeah. If they take it outside and they drop it outside and crack the screen, well, that's an easy discussion with mom and dad. I lock them up, and guess what? So-and-so didn't want it locked up. Took it outside. Now it's broken. Like, it's simple. Yeah. It's a simple consequence, right? I mean, it's a major one, but the students, they get it. Especially the 4 students where you saw the devices. These 4 kids, they bring them every day. Like, I was laughing the week before March break. I saw all the devices laying out, and I just chuckled because people come into my room. Some teachers I know come into my room and just die when they see these devices everywhere. And I'm like, what about this upsets you more? Like, what bothers you the most about this? Because my phone is out. I'm constantly recording audio. I'm constantly taking photos of their work and what my students are engaged in, because I use that information to reflect. I use that information to collect data. I use that information to inform my practice to improve their learning. So if I'm doing it, why can't they be doing it? You know what I mean?
For sure. Can you throw down, besides the native apps that would be on that technology, do you have any ones in particular that you kind of dig using for capturing? Are you artifactual capturing or personal reflection capturing?
Both. So, well,
what do you like to use?
I love taking pictures of them in the middle of whatever it is they're doing. So it could be a discussion. It could be them creating something, either like paper pencil technology. These days, I just use the native voice app on my iPhone to capture conversation. More formally, I'll bring them over to my desktop computer where I have a mic and a camera, and we'll do a quick vlog, and then I'll put that out to parents. And I also have a blog where I put our vlogs and our audio files. So that's generally what happens. Every now and again, I'll take video. Like if I see something happening that's really awesome, I will capture video of them discussing it, or making something and talking about what they're making and why they're making it. So they see their teacher always has his device. Like today we go into the gym, I grab my phone because I need to know what time it is in the gym because the clocks are all wrong, right? So but if I see something cool, like the Swish video, do you know about the Swish video?
No.
Okay.
Tell me.
Okay, so I've got my iPhone in my back pocket, right? Most people do these days. They've got their mobile device on them. And we're in the gym. We just finished playing a game. And I'm putting the equipment away. And many of the students are sitting around the middle of the gym, just kind of chilling out, getting ready to go back to class. And as I'm putting stuff away, one of my students says to me, can I get a basketball and shoot at the hoop? And I'm like, no, you might hit somebody. I can't fully supervise you. Like, there's a million reasons. So he says, well, can I get a basketball? And when you come out, I can shoot from half court to see if I get it in. And I'm like, sure, why not? So he gets the ball and then he says to me, can I have a practice shot? And I'm like, not until I get out of the storage room. So I put everything in the room, come out, and I say to him, okay, you get one practice shot and then you get the real shot. And we'll see if you can sink it from half court. And, he says, well, can I get something if I get it in? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you want? He's like, I don't know, extra computer time or something. I said, you know what? If you sink it, I'll give the whole class an extra 10 minutes of activity time or something. Like, sure, let's make it fun. Yeah. So he takes the first shot and it didn't go in. And then I may have let him have a second shot, but it was time. And so he's kind of dribbling the ball. It's really quiet. And I'm like, I got this vibe. So I pulled out my iPhone. I hit record. And he shoots and he sinks it. And I call it Swish. And it's on YouTube. It's like a 6-second video. But from that video, I talked about growth mindset with the kids. I talked about failure. Like, it led to so much that actually reached them in a way that I don't think I've been able to reach them all year. It's because their classmate was able to show them these things in real life, and to be able to talk about, I can sink that shot because this is how I prepare. I play basketball. Exactly. So now it's a YouTube video. My rant on Rodenizer's edu rants was about Swish. Anyway, I'll send you the link. But
that's awesome.
Like, if I didn't have my phone with me, I wouldn't have been able to capture that. It wouldn't be on YouTube. I wouldn't be able to use it as a learning tool. I wouldn't be able to motivate this one student. This one student, it's his pride and joy. It's 6 seconds on YouTube, and he is
it's
like
glory. It's glory, though.
It is glory. It's for him. It's an artifact of his learning, of his physical prowess, of his sacrifice, of his growth mindset, of his failure. Like, everything that we want kids to understand, everything we talk to kids about in terms of making them better learners, better people, he has an artifact that symbolizes all of that. And I'm going to stop talking now.
No, that was awesome, because I think that encapsulates the exact purpose of keeping tech handy in the classroom. I had a moment today, and keeping tech handy in the classroom, being aware of your go-to tools in the classroom. It's no different than, in some ways, making sure you have white erase markers and that your extension cords work, and that you, if necessary, you have printer paper in the classroom, and that, your Ethernet cables all work. Mm-hmm. There's, to use your blog title, the new fluency, one of the new fluency of being a teacher is the concept of juggling both analog and digital, because we haven't really moved, nor do I think we'll ever completely move away from analog tools, for the plain fact that your digital capture was entirely based on a really cool analog tool. You didn't do a digital capture of the kid throwing a 2-point, a 3-point shot in NBA 2K. The kid did it in real time, which is analog style, but celebrating and honoring the fact that a really cool thing happened here, and I want to share it out. I was thinking today, as Google Apps was being finicky, and I have a student that right now is primarily using HyperDocs to drive their learning. It's just where they are, where they like to be, where they're successful. And of course, that's the point where the ghost in the machine kicks in and the system starts to fall apart. And I actually had a moment thinking about if there was ever a version of me that would become incredibly stressed with the fact that my technology was not working as I wanted it to, not as I understood it, but as I wanted it to. And it threw me backwards a little bit to think about, was I ever that instructor that, struggled with the LCD projector, or even didn't know how to change the light bulb in the overhead, or wasn't quite sure how to plug in a USB stick. And it had I had a kind of like a bit of a time travel moment, but I came back to the present. I realized, no, I'm going to wait this out. And you know what? If this doesn't work, I'm going to figure out a way to do a face-to-face discussion, and we'll see if the system reboots. And I felt broad in my sort of understanding of what I needed to get that lesson done. And this is the last thing I'll say this, because I have another question I want to get to, but the comment that you had with Carol Salva about not being able to go backwards, I think often it's couched in somehow we forget what happened before. But I think getting connected and using digital is an and statement. It's not an or a but. I will use an overhead projector. The reason I use overhead projectors sometimes is for doing, not actually projecting things, other than if I have kids do mazes on them. So you look in through the overhead projector and you look down onto the table, and the kids sort of have to do a maze in reverse. So I think there's need for using what I would consider, let's say, older tech, which at some point was considered modern tech, but using these things that are not as efficient right now to accelerate the learning. And if you need it, grab your binder. If you need it, grab your iPhone. If you need it, grab a regular camera. but include these as options. And I think when you do that, you totally open yourself up to capturing a 6-second video that is life-changing for this elementary school student in a way that, like you said, curriculum hadn't done so far.
Right. And just something clicked, right? Like they were able to get it. It's another major time that they were able to get it is when I started comparing the way that they would, how resilient they had become when they were using the 3D printer and the 3D printing software. And one day we were doing mathematics, it's kind of ironic because mathematics is very much intertwined with the 3D work and the 3D software. But we were doing some math and the kids were really having a hard time and they were getting down on themselves and they were just being like really immature about it. And I said, why is it that you can pick yourself up 15 times in a row after you try to print something on the 3D printer, which is like an epic fail, and then here you're doing mathematics and you're going through like a multi-step problem and you mess up one step and you lose your mind? Like, I don't understand. What's the difference? What is the difference for you? And how are we going to get past that? Because what you're doing with the 3D printer is life. You're constantly going to be iterating. And so why shouldn't that happen when you're doing mathematics with manipulatives or with paper and pencil or calculator or whatever? And they just looked at me. They looked at me and they were like, you're right. What is it about this that is bringing us down and we're not able to get back up the way we do with the other things? And so we learned some things there. Right? Like I learned what can I do in mathematics or around mathematics that will assist you in becoming more resilient as a teacher. But what can you do as a student? Like you need to advocate for yourself. You need to talk to me about these things. And so I get what you're saying about the technology, the modern and the old. I'm a firm believer of get done what you need to get done and do it in a way that is going to help you be relatively comfortable. And I don't mean that in discomfort is the enemy. I mean it in if you have a goal and you're not sure how to get that goal and then a couple of things click and you begin there, it doesn't matter where you begin. Just go. So if you need whatever you need, pencil crayons, rulers, wooden ones, like whatever, get what you need and start thinking, because ultimately that's the goal, right? Like when they leave my class next year and the teacher gives them a task and says, we don't have the Chromebook, so you can't use GAF. Well, I don't need all 30 of these kids to be like paralyzed and say, I don't know how to get this done. You need to get it done. You need to be able to think. And so ultimately that's the goal. But I find for me, the tech really gets them going, really excites them. And that's always a bonus, but there has to be a purpose. And another thing you'd know if you were a student in my classroom community is if somebody walks into the room and asks you what you're doing and you can't tell them what the purpose is of what you're engaged in, then we have a major problem. I have a major problem. I tell my students all the time, I don't want to lose my job because you don't know what you're doing or you're messing around. There's probably 100 good reasons why I should lose my job, and I don't want that to be one of them. And they get it. They get it, but more importantly, they now prepare themselves for learning. They stop and they think, what is the purpose of what I'm about to do? I need to know what my purpose is because it will help me get to my goal. So I thought I'd throw that in there as well.
No, it connects with me because I've started more now. And so in high school, I went through a time where I didn't spend as much direct conversation in the difference between what you're learning and what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And making the kids understand that there's a vast difference there. And you need to be able to articulate what it is, what's happening each one of those sectors. And by being able to do so, you're able to articulate how you can support your learning. Mm-hmm. If you're learning about quadratics, you may maybe doing formula after formula after formula is not the best way for you to learn quadratics. Maybe you need manipulatives. Maybe you need to see a video on it. Maybe you need to have a graphic. Like, there's so many different ways to come at it. And I think by sort of cracking open the language and demystifying it for the students, giving them the access to that power, I totally agree. Like, I do have an issue if a kid can't say to me, to be able to answer those two questions. What are you learning? What are you doing? And then on top of that, why are you learning this? Which is not a backwards looking question. It's a forwards looking question, as in, why are you learning this and where does it connect to your future? And then what are you doing and how is that supporting your learning style, your learning approach? And to be able to say, you know what, I'm coloring in a map right now, so I guess I'm learning about continents. So I'm using coloring to help. I want that kid to be able to say, I can't see these 3 colors, sir. You've asked me to use 10 different colors. I can't see 3 of them. Or I don't have the small muscle control to outline it because you said all the continents have to be outlined in black. Mm-hmm. So that's key information. And I would say that I spent probably the first 5-6 years of teaching not understanding. Like, there's some small simplicities in teaching that take a really long time for teachers to realize.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I'm fortunate is that, and maybe you are too, that I'm starting to really listen to myself and listen trying to hear myself in the way that I'm delivering what sounds so clear inside my head. And I think where you talked about using audio reflection or using audio and video capture, there's pretty much nothing that's more real time than that. The story changes when it goes brain to hand to pencil to paper. It doesn't change so much when you capture it in the moment with video and audio. It's a lot closer to the bone. And as far as informing what you need to do next, buddy, I don't know if there's anything better. I really don't, for ourselves and for students.
What you just said about understanding teaching and how it works. It's when you said that, it made me think, like, some days I'm just begging for somebody to talk to me about the work that we're doing. And I don't mean I mean people in my building, like, come into my room and ask me about something or just say something to me so I can respond. Because it's different than when you walk into your colleague's room and just start blabbing. Sometimes, and I've been getting this a lot, there's the grade 5 teacher, she's relatively new. So she'll come in, she'll ask questions or whatever. And I love it because it gets me thinking about my practice. And it's that conversation that, how do I explain this? It's the face-to-face experience of what I get from my digital PLN. It's that person in front of me who's engaging me about the work or something that they see in the room or something that they're talking about something that I've said and they want to go deeper with it. And I've been getting more of that experience with the digital and not the face-to-face. So some days it's just like I'm starving for, please, can someone talk to me about this? Because I either want you to push back or I want you to continue to question so that I can reflect and try to think through my thinking and give you an answer and then see if it makes sense and get your feedback. Like, it's that rich dynamic of the dialogue within the work that we do that we don't always get to do because we're in our room teaching, we're taking care of the kids, we're planning, we've got a million things on our list to do that day, and things like that just fall off the list. They just don't happen. So wow, what you said, I was like, yes, some days it's just about talking about the practice and whether it makes sense and why it makes sense. And that feeling that you know what you're doing. Like, you have this foundation that's solid and you build upon that foundation. It's that confidence that you're doing your job to the best of your ability, but you're still open to learning because you never stop learning. You're always improving, but you have a foundation where if somebody came and said, what are you doing? Like, why is this happening? Oh, let me explain that to you and let you tell you why and when I discovered that, why I discovered it. Like, it's again, the many layers that are on top of what's happening that might look so simple to somebody or might look ridiculous to someone, but until they hear about it, until they understand where you're coming from, then there's an appreciation for what you're doing and for the foundation that you've built.
I've been, there's a whole lot, like when I am in the zone with exactly, like when I'm on point, it is messy. But I will tell you, the messy is a direct result of some deep exploration, research, and command of the rules of engagement. The fact that I can exist in a messy state, and you've alluded to this, someone walking into your class and like, what is going on? The fact that I can exist in that messy state is not because I'm a messy person. It's because I understand at a fairly deep level the nuances of the, my own pedagogical style, but also like the rules of pedagogy and, lesson design and expectation integration and differentiation and all of the jargon stuff that is passed along to us. It gets in there. The way I measure it out is in time delivery and real-time delivery. So as per necessary, I will become the version of the teacher that I need to be with the students that are in front of me. Mm-hmm. And I have had classes where I can do the lecture, and they're going to get the learning, and we're going to get to the conversation. And I've had the kids that need to get the granola bar, and without the granola bar and the snack, nothing's happening. Mm-hmm. So I totally, that resonates with me. You talk about someone walking into your class and they need a map because what they see doesn't jive with what I think textbook versions of what classrooms still, what they're kind of being advertised as. Despite our sort of still our forays into modern learning and the classrooms that look a lot less like row on row, old school 1985, 1990, 1995 kind of classrooms, that thought has roots. Mm-hmm, and to see a classroom that's in full messy mode, I know I can freak people out. But it tightens up in the end, and we get places, and we get really interesting places because of it.
Yeah, and I'd love to add that being in that zone and being in that, like, experiencing that flow is not always easy. Like, no it's I've said to my students a lot, like, I'm providing you with all kinds of options and all kinds of like different ways to kind of help empower you with your learning, and I'm not feeling that it's working. And then so I have these honest conversations with them, and I tell them, I'm doing this because it's supposed to help you. And if it's not helping you, then I need to do something different. And it's really funny because some of the students will look at me and smirk, like they get it. They know what's going on. They know that the room that they're in is different than the room next door. And that's not to say that there's a problem with the room next door. It's just that I'm trying to be as transparent as I can be about my process with them, because I want them to see that I am thinking about their learning. I am thinking about what is best for them, and it's pushing me to a place I've not been before, and that I don't feel good about it. So I don't go in every day and do all these amazing things for them without there being a cost. Some days it's very difficult in terms of it's hard on me because of my prior knowledge or my prior experiences, but I know what my role is, and my role is to lead them to success. And sometimes that means I have to put aside my biases, my issues, what I think is right, in order to lead them to where they need to go. But I also believe it's important for them to know what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling, because I want to model that for them. I want them to be able to do that with me and with other people. Today, we were having a tense moment in the room, and one of the grade 5 students looked at me and said, I am feeling really anxious. Mm-hmm. And then right away, we stopped what we were doing. I looked at the student, I said, do you know what you need from me right now? Like, is there anything I can do that immediately that's going to cause you to feel a little bit better? And she said something like, I just don't like what's happening in the room right now. And I
was a
said,
bigger dynamic.
oh my God, like she could feel it was a tense moment. It was a serious tense moment. And she just looked at me, she just said it. And I was like, half of me was, yes, this is awesome. This is what we need. We don't need people flipping desks and throwing chairs. We need people to be able to communicate this in a pro-social way. But then I thought, uh-oh, am I part of this anxiety? And if I am, then I need to do what I can do to lessen that for her. So I said, you're more than welcome to go grab a drink, take a walk, come back. It will feel different in here. She left. I said to the kids, okay, whatever we're feeling right now, like we need to work on it because we have a colleague who's told us this is not working. It's causing her like major issues. That's not cool for anybody. And so let's put this down and we'll regroup and we'll deal with it at another time. And they all looked and they did it. Like I had 31 kids acknowledge what I said and show major respect for one of their colleagues, their classmates. And when she came back, she said, I was breathing. I went for a walk. I'm good now. And I said to the whole class, this is what we're here for. Ultimately, this is what we're here for, to learn how to be, to learn how to respect each other, to learn we're not alone. And sometimes the things we do are going to cause people difficulties. And if we can avoid that or work through it, we're all going to benefit. And so that was like the highlight of my day, but it came from darkness, right? Like it didn't come from a great Disney moment. It came from a really bad moment, but it led to some amazing on the spot learning that they're going to use, I hope, for the rest of their lives.
And as you started with this, it wasn't easy. You started from a spot that like it wasn't planned. You made an amazing connection for the child, for yourself, for the class. But that's not easy. That's definitely not easy. And when you get there, though, the payoff's huge. Mm-hmm. The payoff really is huge. I wanted to ask you. I really have very few specific questions, but one of the ones that I've been curious about is, so are you 40 episodes deep into your podcast now? Is it about
yes,
40? So you're 40 deep now. And I have come to accept that in my pursuit of sort of like of throwing down podcasts, that I've had touchstone moments where the conversation it gets in, because there's an element of this where in honoring the person that I'm talking to, you become reflective in real time, and that's problematic because then you start to lose sight of the conversation, and it's so important to stay present in this. And I think you and I talked about it at some point before. Maybe we did a Google Hangout, and it really is easier to stay focused when there's a picture of someone's face up in front of you the whole time, and you're sort of like there's video footage. There's a different flow that happens, a different vibe that happens when it's just voice. Mm-hmm. But there's also a really sweet purity about it that without the need to focus on someone's face, you focus on the words. And if you can stay in the words, awesome. If the words create reflection and they take you somewhere, that's cool too. You just have to make sure you're tracking off the conversation, that when they say, and what do you think, Chris? I'm like, So what I'm curious about, what this is all leading up to is that, so being 40 deep, that is I'm going to say conservatively, that's 40 hours of your time. And I know exactly what I'm saying, because I know that you've talked about before the grind. Uh-huh. One of the things that I've come to see is that for an hour podcast, I think I've knocked it down to about 2 to 3 hours of post-production or pre-production. So if you're to say 40 hours, if you're to sort of, and you can say, no, that's not right, but let's just say 40 hours of learning you've gone through, specifically in your interactions with all the amazing people that you've spoken to. What's gotten in? Do you have a moment where you think to yourself, wow, that I cannot walk away from that knowledge. I can't let go of that. And it's sort of still kind of connecting with you.
That's a great question, Chris. Really good question. And I have to say that I really, truly feel blessed and honored to have been able to go 40 episodes, because that means that a whole whack of people have taken time out of their lives to engage me in discussion about what motivates them, what inspires them, the awesome work that they do, and the story that they have to tell. And so the biggest takeaway, I would say, as you're prefacing your question and then you just gave it to me, wow, I've got this really amazing appreciation for people and how kind people can be. And I know that might sound kind of corny, but that's really what's really stuck. Like, aside from, a lot has stuck, like stories, advice people have given, listening to what motivates them, what gets them going, what gets them to do the things that they do. Those for me are like the little things. They seem like the big things when you're doing them. But when you ask me this question, I take a step back. Those are the little things. The big things are the human connection, the trust, the time, the energy, all those things going into sitting down with me and having a conversation. That has been the biggest thing for me, that people are engaging me in something that I've asked them to do for me. And at the end of the day, I've had a few people say, okay, so like, what's the goal here? What are you going to be doing with this? And I tell them the goal is for me to learn from you and for me to create this content that is available to anybody who wants it. That's the goal. And so I'm honored, like, truly, because I would never have been able to do this face to face. Hey, Chris, let's meet up at my place, and you live like an hour away from me, right? So drive down here for an hour. Let's chat for an hour, and then get back in your car and go. So you're gonna leave your family. Your whole life's gonna be kind of, tipped upside down to do this for me. Well, again, we go back to the technology. It's available for people to do in their house, on the go, wherever, whatever. And I just can't get over how awesome people are at the core. They're just good people, and they want to learn, and they want to spread the learning, and they're kind, like, they're engaging me. So that's been my biggest takeaway, and it continues. Like, even the people who don't say yes to the podcast for whatever reason, even they've taken the time to read my messages to them, telling them what I do, what I'd like to do, inviting them to participate. Like, for me, it's just huge. It's just huge, because I know how busy people are. I know it's nuts. Like, I'm not really a busy guy, but I have kids, I have a wife, I have a job, I have my personal projects. All that sucks up time. I need to sleep and eat and exercise. So now that I think about what I said, it sounds really corny, but if you could, go into my brain and go to the part of me that feels good about people giving me their time and just being kind to me, it's an amazing feeling that I just can't shake. And that's what sticks out the most. That's the big picture for me.
I don't for a second think it's corny, and it's not because I've drank the Kool-Aid too, and I'm, feeling that that need to sort of reach out to people, sometimes cold calling, sometimes it's people that I've been connecting with for a long time, sometimes it's people that I have absolutely no digital connection to whatsoever, but I just really feel like their story, their experiences, more people should hear about it. And I try and find that balance between honoring the story and promoting, like trying to get that person, like, I want to know more. And it's always a delicate balance between the two. And, you know, like I was mentioning in before we hit the record, is that I've found that I'm slowly moving back from, like, I have the questions. I think I shared that with you back in the day, like a whole structured question sheet. And I think that that's important for me to have when I look back at that as part of my process. I think now that it was necessary for me to start my thinking and to give myself touch points. But the more that I've looked at it a few times, and a few people have said, wow, they're really great questions, but I don't know if they lead to great conversation. And that's the thing that I'm slowly learning in this pursuit is, yes, an appreciation for the kindness for the people that say yes, and a deep respect, constant respect for those that say no, and still to honor the fact that I am interested and I'm here whenever, if your, you know, perspective changes. And also loosening up and staying in the moment with the conversation, where just cool stuff will only come out if the speakers feel like they're in a trusting environment and they're interested to talk. And I think you also hear that in the podcast too, because I've listened to podcasts where it really does feel like an interview, not a conversation. And I'm not saying one's better or worse. I just know that I'm more comfortable now with the conversation. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, for me, it's a balancing act, right? Like, some people will say, okay, well, what are you gonna ask me? Can you tell me?
Yeah.
And I give them a general, like, these are the 2 or 3 things that I'd really love to know. But I would, whatever your story is, I'd like to run with it. Like, if you say something that totally grabs me, I want to talk about it. I'd like to explore it with you. And then there are some people that are like, let's just do this, man. Hit the record button. Let's just talk. And it's like, awesome. Let's just talk. Let's just see where it goes. I get that. And I try to honor everybody's, because they're taking their time to spend it with me. I do my best to honor it. But I don't feel comfortable when it's more like an interview. I prefer to have a conversation. But ultimately, if I care about the person's story, then it doesn't matter how it comes out, because that's the ultimate goal, is to tell the story.
It's true. And I've found myself doing the research. There are people that I've noticed online, and they stay in the back of your brain. It's like, you know what? Like, I really like what they're posting. I like some of the articles. So the stuff, the media that they've created, I like the media that they're sort of sharing. So it sort of is reflective of the things they're creating, and it starts to lead you down that path of, wow, I wonder what it'd be like to meet this person in real life, digital real life, let's say, because as you said, you know, it's not like you can travel everywhere. And I find that has become more of my process. Who am I noticing? Why am I noticing? And what more do I want to find out that won't come out in 140 characters? And I've done the cold call, and I have a few people that I've connected with that I am really excited about talking to. Some of these people that I have absolutely no connection to, but I feel there's something there. Like, it's that weird kind of, like, you suspect, like, this is gonna go, that there's something there, and I'm looking forward to that. And that's, again, a bit of that comfort zone to get into. I'm finding with the podcasting that taking that chance can produce pretty cool results sometimes. Do you have anybody that in your podcast that you took that big chance on in the conversation, like you really didn't think it was ever going to happen? Like, it just seemed like there was so much work, there was so much set up, it was sort of, but then the payoff was pretty cool.
That's a great question. And I don't know if I can answer that, like, on the spot. I know that, yeah, because I'm 40 deep, right? So
yeah,
I just feel like
that's a lot of content. That is,
yeah,
that's a lot of content.
Every single one has been awesome in its own right. But I mean, I guess if I had to answer the question, I would say that the podcast that happened that I thought could easily not happen was with Jamie Cassip, the Google evangelist, because Jamie's constantly traveling, and some of the other guests I've had on, they travel as well, but not to the same extent as Jamie. Like, if you follow Jamie on Facebook and Twitter, he's constantly all over the place working. And when I reached, and he's got a great story. Like, he came from nothing and now he's something. And that's people will debate whether what he's doing now is something or not. But for me, it's that going from rags to riches, and I don't think he's rich, but what I mean is he's just come from poverty and a place where, he was worried that he wouldn't survive, like that he'd lose his life living where he was living. And now he's going around talking about the power of education and the power of the internet to help our students move forward. And I just didn't think Jamie would have the time to talk to me. And I wasn't that deep in my podcast when I hit him up. But
I think that's around like podcast 12 or 13. Like, you were sub 20, I think, at that point, weren't you?
Yeah, yes, I was. And it was early. So, but you know what? He was more than happy. I even had to cancel our original time because I had technology issues. And I'm like, okay, this is it. This guy's he's not going to let me do this again after negotiating, a time and a day. He was more than happy to accommodate. But again, so, Jamie's got a fan for life in me, because this person in this position of authority, so to speak, in ed tech and education, he took the time, he gave me the time of day. He was very gracious, very respectful, when he could have been a total jerk if he really wanted to be. Now, having said that, I've not experienced anybody being a total jerk.
Right.
But like I said, some people, for one reason or another, can't do it or don't want to. And I respect that. Nobody's been rude about it. But he did not have to. Nowhere near having to do this. And he did. So, it's hard for me to single one person out, because everybody that I've approached, like, I've genuinely wanted to sit down and talk to them. But Jamie strikes me as a very, like, he's got a lot going on. And like you said, I was under 20. So if he looked at my blog, which I referred him to, he could have been like, dude, you just started, what are we going to talk about? Like, you have no foundation. You're using probably like the weakest mic in the world kind of thing. But he didn't come at me like that at all. He showed me great respect, and he was more than happy to tell his story and to share his perspective on motivation and inspiration.
Yeah, and it came out in the interview, your connections, sorry, wrong word, in the conversation, it came out. That was one of the podcasts. I remember, it's funny, I remember less about the podcast. I had the shape of the podcast, but I remember where I was and walking home from work, because it was in the fall when I listened to it. The weather was still beautiful, and I think I listened to that sort of in early October, walking to pick up my kids. And I thought to myself as I was listening to it, I'm like, this guy's talking to someone at Google. Like, who gets to do that? And, as I'm thinking about how slow our board was to integrate with GAPS, and how, or the GAF, I guess some people call it too, but just, you sort of get this place, like, I'm using tools that this guy has sort of played a part in evangelizing, or saying this is like the next thing. Like, he's been a part of this, and I'm using it way out on the, I'm being wagged. I'm way out on the end of the tail, so to speak. But I thought, like, good for you, buddy. Like, teacher talking to this tech guru. And I thought that was also a bit of, and I don't know if we had the CA meeting or if it was soon after that, but I think it was that thing that kind of started to sort of really crystallize that seed in me that made me think, I can just ask people. If he can talk to the person from Google, I can at least get a few people to talk to me on my podcast. So that just kind of occurred to me now, and I can remember that I tried the actual Cassup convo. I think it took me a few times to listen to, just because I kind of started and then life took over and in bits and pieces. But I remember him being incredibly kind and willing to sort of talk and share his life story, like, openly and constructively. And I thought, wow, that is a powerful conversation. That is a very powerful conversation.
It's he was very authentic, very honest, and like just totally like, you know, and he wasn't one of the people that said, you know, what are the questions going to be? He's like, no, man, let's have a conversation. He was all over it. But that just goes to like a confidence about him, a trust, the same kind of thing as me, like someone taking the time to just want to talk to him. It seemed like he really appreciated that. And he might not get that a lot, you know, because he's on stage and he's keynoting and he's speaking to lots of people all the time, and he's active on social media, and he's not afraid to say what he wants to say. Like, he just says it. He's like, that's the way he rolls. And good for him, you know? So yeah, like, now you've got me reflecting on that talk, and I'm still really honored. How many have you done now? Where are you at?
I will in the next, only because I have like the grind, right? It's funny how you get capture and then you get processing. So probably, let's say this time next week, I'll be at 11.
Okay.
I'll be at 11 podcasts of my own. And then I started my kids' podcast. They wanted to do one.
Which is fantastic. I heard your daughters.
It's totally jokes, eh? Like, they're hilarious in their interaction.
I had a smile on my face the whole time, because it just brings me right back to like just the power of audio, the power of conversation, just amazing stuff. But you've been hitting it hard. Like, you'll be at 11, but you're really putting in the time. Like, I listen to your podcast, and like, it sounds pro, and not to say that it shouldn't, but it sounds legit. You ask great questions. You've got awesome guests. Like, I can't wait to see and hear what it's like when you hit 40, because it's
wow. I feel it there. I can't imagine it, because it's sort of like, that'd be like, could you have imagined hitting the 40 if you knew the legwork that it would take to get there? Do you know what I mean? Because it's that multiplier, right? You have 40 hours in, but I'm guessing it's probably at least at 120 hours to get that out.
Yes.
Like with the legwork and the planning.
You know what I've started doing, and I don't want to, I don't know how much time we have, but I need to tell you this, because this is, okay, so you and I have talked about the grind. And so for your listeners that aren't familiar, for me, when I talk to someone on the podcast, I spend, 45 minutes to an hour, and we chat. But then after, there's the post-production, just listening to it again, making sure it's legit, making sure I'm honoring what the person has said, cutting things out that don't make sense, or, dead air, whatever, and adding a little bit of music here and there. But that grind, it was like... it was like sweet misery. Like, I have to do it to get to the other side. And I don't hate it, because I enjoy getting to the other side. But what's happened over the past 40, and so I'm talking to you now on your podcast, and I'm at 40, but we probably talked about the grind back when I interviewed you, which I don't even remember when that was, but it was back in the day.
You honored me with that. It was like, I got in on like episode 7, I think. Like, it was really early. Talking to me. I was like, what? Sure. Why not?
See, that's the thing. People do that, and that bothers me. That's a pet peeve of mine. People are like, why do you want to talk to me? Because I feel like there's something about your story that I really like, and that I really want to explore and share with other people. That people who tell me, Rolland, I got nothing to talk about, I'm like, can we just have a conversation? Like, just sit down and have a conversation with me. I will record it, and you will see what it'll turn into. Okay. Anyway, that's an aside. But the grind has now become, I might need to change the name, because now when I sit down to do post-production and write the blog, I grab myself a nice cold beverage, a snack. And I'm not talking about an adult beverage. I'm just talking about a nice, I get myself set up at the computer. I've got I see it. I really look forward to it. And so maybe I need to revisit the word grind. I don't know if that's too harsh at this point, but when I was doing Andrew Campbell's post-production the other day, I was giddy. So I got to talk to him one night, and then I was giddy to get back to the computer to listen to the audio so I could write my blog. But I was like, it's become kind of a tradition for me to enjoy myself through the process, because it can be miserable, or I can be really cool about it. And so I had a pop, I had a snack, and I listened to it and I enjoyed it. And I always enjoy it the second time around, but something's changed. It's not the battle that I have to fight to win the war. It's more like the general sitting and looking at the map and being proud of the troops that are going to go out and do the work for him. It's really weird. Anyway, so at this point, it's like I look forward to that time, because that time leads to something in the end that hopefully everybody's proud of.
Mm-hmm. I think also what you're speaking to is the experience. Without being able to sort of say that you've learned a lot about your own process, you now, it's the muscle memory, digital muscle memory, or editing muscle memory. The decisions they could still be hard decisions, but seeing them for what they are becomes easier, because you now understand your flow, your sort of philosophy, your kind of angle, and you're still creating your art that's authentic to you. Mm-hmm. But I think because it's worked into a point, you're able to make better plays, right? The glove's worked in. You're still catching the ball. You're just able to sort of flow and throw it back to second a lot faster. So yeah, it shows in your conversations that you have an ease about you that I think it helps the conversation a lot. I think it does. I think it helps everything about the tone and the flavor of what you're chatting about. Can I throw one down on the tail end before we wrap up?
Of course.
So as a teacher and a podcaster, so I have to put those two things together. Are you aware of the moments where the signals that you're sending out, that they're arriving somewhere and that they're being kind of noticed and learned from? So it's kind of like, are you aware of an audience out there? Not as in you're playing to them, but that they're coming back and saying, wow, that was really thoughtful. Cool, I'm going to try that. Where are your touch points where you know your audience is listening? Have you had any moments?
I've had several moments. I've had people directly reach out to me and say, I just heard episode whatever, and it was amazing, and I really liked it when this happened or that happened. I've had people so there's always the direct reach, and there's not too much of that, but there's enough that I know people are listening. Then there's the odd tweet here and there where someone will retweet, because that's primarily how I get out my information. I tweet it out or I put it on Instagram, but I get a retweet with a comment that says like, oh, you got to listen to so-and-so on Rolland Chidiac Connects because they talk about this, and that's kind of like how we're moving in our district, or something like that. So I'm getting hits on the blog. So when I'm in the blog writing, I will look at the stats and I see that it's getting hits. So people are visiting, people are checking it out. And you know what? It feels good, because just like when I started blogging, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it for people to come and check it out. I mean, that sounds so backwards, but I'm doing it ultimately because I want to be doing it. And so whether people listen to it or not, in my mind, I'm creating this wonderful content that is there so that if anybody wants it or if I need to refer to it, it's there. I'm like a collector in a way. I've transferred that into blogging, podcasting. I like to collect these moments in time that I can look back on and have good thoughts about, make connections to, use in the future. It feels like I'm doing something bigger than what I do every day, which sounds weird as well, because every day I hope that I'm shaping lives for the better. But I feel like I want to create. I feel like I want to put stuff out there. But if people don't look at it, that's okay, because ultimately it's more for me than it is for them, in a really selfish way. So I don't really know if I answered your question or not, but I know that as I think about what you asked, it just naturally led me to explaining it the way that I did.
No, I think I come from a similar place. I don't have a clear sense, nor do I have like a concrete sense of who's out there listening. I've pulled back a little bit from the blogging part of it because I find like it's almost like the podcasting for me is a separate animal from what I blog about. And I haven't found a way to make those two things dance together. So they're just kind of separate, and I'm okay with that. The podcasting, for me, I totally agree with you on it, is that I have accepted that this could entirely be my own reflective practice. And I'm okay with that. And if someone reaches back and says, wow, that was really funny, or who is that person you were talking to again? Or today someone said, are those your children on the Trail Mix podcast? I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh my gosh, it was so funny. And I think to myself, that's I will take that, and I will cherish that, and I will be so thankful that somebody noticed. But I'm not in a place where I'm driving at that. I feel a compulsion to sort of talk to people about their edu stories and their stories of change within education and how they're kind of leveraging change. And as I asked you, how do you know that the system is kind of like echoing back to you? Is it honoring you for your sort of your efforts? And I think for everybody that I talk to, they'll have a different way to sort of measure that, and all of them will be correct. If you feel like the systems that you work for and the people that you work with are respectful to you and kind of giving you a thumbs up, everyone's going to have a different place where that lands.
Are you getting the feedback? Are you getting people reaching out to you about your podcast and the content that you're putting out? Are you hearing from people?
Through Twitter. I do. I get comments back through Twitter. I do. I don't think I've ever included on any of the sort of the closing on the podcast, please, if you like what you heard, because in going into this, there's a lot of sort of templates you can use as far as what your intro is going to be and how you're going to slide your music in and how you're going to slide your music out, and if you're going to use little quotes in the beginning. Like, there's lots of little ways that you can grab other people's style. One of the things I notice some people include is, if you like what you heard, please leave a positive review on iTunes. And I've never gone there. I just feel like I put it to iTunes because that's a audience base where more people can grab it. It's a convenient place for people to grab it. But I've received positive feedback from Twitter, from people saying that was cool, or yeah, I like that person too, or I like what you sort of said about. I will say, as far as intensity of feedback, hands down, my kids' two podcasts of Trail Mix has gotten more positive, like straight up positive. That was so cute. Like, people just like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. So kudos to my kids for wanting to give it a try. They're trending higher than me, I think, right now. But that's okay too, because I love playing with them that way, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, that's all I got for you. And I don't mean that's all as in I actually had a limit. But We did good. We did good on the clock. You're my official benchmark for intensive, interesting, and the all-in-one. This was the full buffet, friend.
The full buffet. Well,
The full
listen, I have to
buffet.
tell you, I've really enjoyed it, and thank you for taking the time to chat with me. Like, I love this stuff. I'm eating it up these days, and I'm honored that you would consider talking to me. Because I don't want to bore your your listeners. I don't want them to be turned away from you at such an early point in your podcasting career. But hopefully people will take something away from our conversation. And like I said, it's been a real pleasure getting to know you. I do consider you a friend, so we're past the digital phase. It's too bad we weren't able to get together over the spring break, but you know what? It'll happen some point.
It will.
I just think, it's people like you that help inspire me. And so,
thank you.
oh, no problem. It's important that we have those people, and it's important that we continue to connect. So, props to you for taking this on and for jumping into something that you've always wanted to do, and something about, the time that it started just worked for you. It flew through you, and you were able to start doing it. So major props to you, and thanks again for having me on and talking to me.
Very welcome. And you can be found where? If people are looking, where would you like them to find you?
Well, they can find me on Twitter at rchids, which is RCHIDS. You can check out my professional teaching blog. It's newfluencies.blogspot.com. And you can also check out the podcast. It's called Rolland, Chidiac Connects on iTunes. And if you don't have iTunes, then it's on the net at rchids, RCHIDS, podcast.blogspot.ca. Those are the best ways to connect with me.
Cool, man. I love this. This was a great combo.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Yeah, have a good one.
You too. Good night. Thanks for checking out Chasing Squirrels podcast. You can find more episodes on iTunes. I also help my kids out with their podcast, which is called Trail Mix. That's also a part of the Chasing Squirrels podcast collection on iTunes. If you choose to check me out on Twitter, you can find me at Chris J. Clough. And I also have a blog on Blogger that is of the same name, Chris J. Clough. Thanks for spending time with me.